Welcome to another episode of Mindful Molly with me, your host, Molly Kaluva, a spirituality podcast focused on growth and self-awareness, a space where none are judged and all are welcome as we strive to become better versions of ourselves. So this was an episode that I had already recorded. I recorded this episode maybe a week ago. And right after when I was like editing it and looking and listening to it, I talked to my best friend about it. And part of our conversation just kind of made me think deeper about what I was talking about. Like I felt like I was just touching the surface, so I wasn't being specific enough when I was discussing what I was discussing about, which is what I'm about to tell y'all. I know I'm like speaking in code. I don't know why I'm doing that. Like y'all are already here. It's not like a trailer, but most of it was to do with trauma and past trauma, past events that like have heavily affected us and how we associated them heavily with certain locations, things, items, whatever was around, even who was around during that time of trauma and what we like, certain things we experienced, but like hurt, pain, even happiness, joy, different things. We associate certain places with that. And when it comes to the healing process, we were looking at how our perspective on those locations, our perspective on those things, and a lot of things surrounding that drastically changed after the fact, after we started working on ourselves and like healing from some of those things, and even like re-experiencing some of those places. Because what tends to happen is certain places that I do not like going to or do not like being around, simply because for me a lot of bad memories are had there. But then what really changed, or how my perspective changed on some of those things, is when I re-experienced some of those locations again and like went back to them after a long time. It was like almost a breath of fresh air. It felt good, it felt new, and like my mind, my body, everything in me was kind of like scared, because I'm like, this is somewhere that you don't like. This is somewhere that, is terrible, is bad. But it was like, I noticed in those moments and was able to separate the fact that it's not the space or location that's bad. And that sounds obvious, but that's what we tend to do. It was the memories, the hurt, the pain, things I hadn't moved past or like dealt with at the time that was leading me to feel some kind of way about certain locations. And my best friend was sharing with me that they had a similar experience where it was like even more love for that place that caused so much hurt, or that place that so much hurt, the event that took place that caused hurt and pain happened. And actually in my wording is the problem that I realized within myself, and that I've noticed especially beginning of this year, that just kind of like flipped my mind. It's like, for a lot of people, okay, being home caused me so much pain, but it wasn't the home itself, it wasn't the house itself, it wasn't the place itself, it wasn't the items itself, it was the events that took place, be it the people that were there at the time. Like those were the things that triggered that experience, that moment, that event of suffering, of pain. And sadly, because we attach ourselves to some of those like memories and thoughts, it hinders us from finding possibly the best things in our present moment or even in our future, because we have crossed out things that were associated with hurt and pain and all these different things in the past. And then you find yourself in like the present slowly sometimes. If you're lucky enough, you find yourself falling in love, or like trying certain things that you kind of crossed off your list or said, no, this caused me too much pain again, and then you start to find a lot more joy, which has happened to me now a couple of times. But part of it is because I started to develop, or I already started to develop this mindset of like, I'm not gonna say never, I'm not gonna say no, I'm not gonna cross off certain things, I'm gonna allow myself to experience. Because when we change, when we're healing, we also change as the people we are. We change what we like, what we don't like. And that's why I speak a lot about learning more about yourself, or every day just getting to know the present you. Because when you start to get to know the present you start to realize some of your things that you were like, no, I hate, or I don't want, or whatever, they start to become the things you actually enjoy. Because some of those ideas that you have of what you like, what you don't like, they weren't like just because of what was taking place at the time per se. They were to do with the emotions you felt. They weren't to do with the actual items or like objects or locations. It was more like who you were and the pain and the events that happened at that moment. And part of going through, what I've talked about, like that journey of forgiveness and forgiving yourself, forgiving others, letting things go, and allowing those negative emotions to like pass through you and like past you and like let go. You also, with that, when you allow that process to happen within yourself, you also lose part of yourself. You lose that part of yourself that was hurt, betrayed, whatever those emotions are. And with that, you lose sometimes that dislike or negative, sometimes positive feeling towards a certain location. And when I say also positive, it's like some of the things I started to enjoy and love when I was feeling the way I was or dealing with certain things, I no longer enjoy or like now. And part of me was like, what's wrong? Why am I not enjoying this? Why am I not liking this? Some of these were like positive activities too. And it's because those activities or the things I was doing were heavily tied to what I was going through, like emotionally. So when because there were coping mechanisms. So when I stopped running from and I started dealing with the emotions I had, I started losing interest in my like coping mechanism or certain activities that were like my coping way. Some of it was like, for me, it was like sports. Like I enjoy sports. Like I love playing basketball. I love playing soccer too a lot of the time. Like I love those. Like still to this day I love them. But I was heavily invested in some of those activities personally. I can't speak for everybody, of course, because of trying to escape. It was my form of like escapism. When I'm at a practice, when I'm playing at the time, it's like me, myself, my teammates, the field, whatever. Like I'm somebody else. I'm in a different space. And then when I started to deal with certain things within myself, I stopped losing that extreme interest within those sports. And it wasn't to say that like, I thought I was like, oh my gosh, I'm losing myself. Like, yes, I'm still an active person. I enjoy being active, but because my love for those things came from a place of hurt and pain, like when I was moving out of that space of hurt and pain to do with escaping and all that stuff, it shifted. Like I just stopped feeling as interested. Now if I had developed that from a more maybe positive way, or birthed in a more positive way, and sometimes even those things we develop in a negative way turn into like our strengths. The point is learning about yourself and gaining that self-awareness and doing it every day, is because even in points of like happiness and pain, like we change drastically. What we love, what we like, what we enjoy, what we don't enjoy, those things change sometimes on a daily basis. And when we don't pay attention to it, we wonder why we're not feeling fulfilled. We wonder why we feel lost. And it's because sometimes we block our like blessings, we block the opportunities to feel more, enjoy more, and happiness, because we're still living in a place of like pain and hurt that we've already moved past or forgiven ourselves from. But we're still closing our minds to it because we haven't even realized the healing and work we've done. And, when it came to, like, this new year, some of the things that were, like, bogging me down and putting me down, and certain things I associate with hurt and pain, I was kind of still keeping them there, even though I know I've moved past them. And it stopped me, and literally up until like maybe the last 2-3 weeks, really, it stopped me from realizing all the good, all the new, all the old things I didn't like that I now kind of like doing. It's made me realize it a lot more once I started to acknowledge that even more than I already did. And I mean, that's the point of growth, that's the point of learning, is that you don't stop learning. You always are in a position of like growing and learning. You know, I personally believe that that's what this life is about. Like, it's all about gaining more, learning more. You never reach that peak. You never reach that, like, nothing is like ultimate. Everything is relative. Everything is based on like perspective, and that's why I've talked about like the law of relativity. It applies to hurt and it applies to like healing times. When you're healing, that's a different perspective. You view things in a different lens versus when you were hurt. So you need to like look at and evaluate your surroundings and your opportunities and the things around you, and just open your mind to them. I'm not saying like everything you didn't like, go and try it out right now because you might like it now. What I'm trying to say is you might be missing out on some great opportunities, great relationships, great, just something more within yourself, just because your mind is still operating with the ideas and thoughts of hurt you, not healed you or healing you. And I think that could just change the whole ballgame for you. I think for me, definitely, the more and more I've been like sleeping on it and thinking about it the past few days, it's like, it's not that like I never knew. It's just sometimes, you know, when you hear things again or when you really start to evaluate and things again, it's like, it's a great reminder. Be amazing. Treat yourself with the absolute kindness. Cut yourself some slack. Explore the current you, the present you. Learn about present you a lot more. Figure out, what does present me like? What does present me enjoy? What does present me not like? You know, those are important details for you. And in doing so, I think you just gain more out of it than you lose. But that being said, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody that's been listening to the podcast. I just want to say thank you for all the love. Thank you for all the comments, all the messages, everybody who's been like supporting it, sharing it. I appreciate y'all so much. Be kind, be caring, be loving, but most of all, take care.